3 days before Thanksgiving, I was checking the seating arrangements at my daughter Jennifer's house. There it was, my name card, placed between my 8-year-old grandson and my 6-year-old granddaughter at the small folding table in the corner. The children's table. After 40 years of hosting Thanksgiving dinner myself, after paying for my daughter's entire education, after helping with the down payment on this very house, I was relegated to sitting with the children while my son-in-law's parents got prime seats at the main table. That night, I made a phone call that would change everything. "Hello, Mr. Peterson. This is Elaine Richardson. I'd like to make some changes to my will. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." Thanksgiving has always been my holiday. For 4 decades, I cooked the turkey, prepared the stuffing from my grandmother's recipe, and opened my home to family and friends. My late husband Thomas and I built traditions together. The crystal glassware only used on holidays, the good china, the embroidered tablecloth that had been in my family for generations. But this year was different. At 68, I had finally agreed to let my daughter Jennifer take over hosting duties. She had been asking for years, insisting that I deserved a break, that I should just relax and enjoy being a guest for once. Her colonial-style house in Oakwood Heights was certainly spacious enough, with that renovated kitchen I helped pay for and the dining room with the bay windows looking out onto the garden, so I agreed. I packed up my recipe cards, wrote detailed instructions about the turkey brine, and even dropped off my grandmother's antique serving platters a week early. "Mom, don't worry about bringing anything," Jennifer had said on the phone. "We've got it all covered." I still baked 3 pies, pumpkin, apple, and pecan, because some traditions you don't surrender. I arrived early that Tuesday before Thanksgiving to help with preparations, pulling into the brick-paved driveway of the 2-story home that bore the subtle markers of affluence, the manicured landscaping, the luxury SUV in the driveway, the monogrammed welcome mat. Jennifer opened the door, smartphone pressed to her ear, designer jeans and cashmere sweater making her look more like a catalog model than the little girl who once helped me knead bread dough. She waved me in with a quick smile, still talking about some work project deadline. My son-in-law Robert barely looked up from his laptop at the kitchen island, mumbling something about quarterly reports. Grammy's here. My grandchildren, at least, came running. Charlotte with her missing front teeth and Charlie with his dinosaur t-shirt. They wrapped their arms around my waist as I balanced the pies in both hands. "Mom, you didn't need to bake," Jennifer said, finally off her call. "We ordered desserts from Magnolia Bakery." "Well, now you'll have both," I replied, setting my pies on the counter. The kitchen smelled of nothing. No turkey, no simmering stock, no herbs or spices. Just the faint chemical scent of the cleaning supplies used by the service that had clearly just finished. "Where's the turkey?" I asked, peering around. "I can help you prep it." Jennifer exchanged a glance with Robert. "We're having it catered, Mom. From that new place downtown, Sterling Provisions. They're delivering everything tomorrow afternoon." Catered? The word felt foreign in my mouth, especially for Thanksgiving. But the whole point is cooking together, sharing recipes. "Mom, please. I'm working from home these 3 days to even make this happen. Not everyone has unlimited time to spend in the kitchen." The subtle dig wasn't lost on me. Since retiring from my position as a library administrator 5 years ago, apparently my time was now considered unlimited, despite the volunteer work, the book club I ran, and the adult literacy program I coordinated at the community center. "See?" I said, swallowing my disappointment. "Well, I'm here to help however you need." "Great." Jennifer smiled, looking relieved. "You can help the kids with their Thanksgiving crafts in the playroom. Keeps them occupied." And so began the slow erosion of my role. I spent that afternoon cutting construction paper and helping little hands trace around them to make turkey shapes, while caterers' menus were reviewed in the kitchen. That evening, Jennifer's in-laws, the Prestons, arrived from Connecticut. Victoria. Preston air-kissed me on both cheeks, her blonde highlights immaculate, her jewelry catching the light. "Elaine, you look well," she said, in that tone that somehow made it sound like an observation rather than a compliment. William Preston, retired investment banker and golf enthusiast, gave me a firm handshake and immediately launched into a conversation with Robert about the stock market. They barely paused their discussion during dinner, which we ate at the kitchen island because the dining room is being set up for Thursday. I noticed how Jennifer jumped to refill their wine glasses, how she laughed too loudly at William's mildly amusing anecdotes, how she mentioned her promotion at the marketing firm 3 times in an hour. "The Richardsons didn't come from money like your family," she once told me during an argument years ago. "You don't understand the pressure to succeed, to prove yourself." As if my husband and I hadn't worked our way through college, built careers from nothing, saved carefully to give her opportunities we never had. The next morning, I came downstairs early, hoping to at least help with some food preparation. Instead, I found the kitchen already bustling, not with family, but with 3 young people in black uniforms arranging platters. The catering staff, Jennifer explained when she came down, already dressed in tailored slacks and a silk blouse, even though it was only 9 a.m. They're handling all the setup too. I retreated to the guest room, feeling strangely like a guest indeed, rather than family. Later that afternoon, I wandered into the dining room and saw Jennifer arranging plates. Cards around an elaborately decorated table. That's when I noticed it, my name card, set aside on the sideboard. "Where will I be sitting?" I asked. Jennifer didn't look up from her task. "We're putting you at the kids' table, Mom. Victoria's sister and brother-in-law are coming, and Robert's work colleague and his wife. We needed the space." I stood frozen, the words hitting me like a physical blow. "The kids' table?" "It's just a seating arrangement," Jennifer said, sounding annoyed. "Besides, you love spending time with Charlie and Charlotte." "But I'm not a child, Jennifer. I'm your mother." She finally looked up, exasperation clear on her face. "Mom, please don't make this difficult. The Prestons are important to Robert's career. His boss will be here. Can you just help out by entertaining?" "The kids? They get bored at long dinners anyway." I looked at the elaborate table, crystal glasses, fine china, linen napkins folded into swans, and then at the folding table in the corner with plastic cups and cartoon character paper plates. The symbolism couldn't have been clearer. "I see," I said quietly. "Don't be dramatic, Mom," Jennifer sighed, returning to her place cards. "It's just one dinner." But it wasn't just one dinner. It was the culmination of years of subtle shifts, the way Jennifer corrected my grammar in front of others, the distracted nods when I shared stories about my volunteer work, the rolled eyes when I mentioned something I'd seen on my outdated Facebook feed, the dismissive "oh, Mom" whenever I offered advice. I was being erased, my traditions, my relevance, my place in the family, all while Jennifer drafted me into service as a convenient babysitter and opened her hand whenever financial support was needed. That night, in the quiet of the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the family photo on the nightstand. Jennifer's wedding day, all of us smiling. Thomas had been gone just 2 years then. He'd left everything to me, with the understanding that eventually it would all go to Jennifer and the grandchildren. The house on Maple Avenue, the vacation property in Maine, the investment portfolio he'd managed so carefully. "Take care of our girl," he'd said in his final days. I'd always assumed that meant financially. Now I wondered if he meant something deeper, protecting her from becoming someone who could dismiss her own mother so easily. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in months. My attorney, William Peterson. I'd been meaning to update my will anyway, to include specific provisions for my grandchildren's education. Now I had more substantial changes in mind. "Hello, Mr. Peterson. This is Elaine Richardson. I hope I'm not calling too late." I looked at the diamond wedding band I still wore. "I'd like to make some changes to my will, significant ones. How soon can we meet?" As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The quiet, certain anger of someone who has finally had enough. Tomorrow, I would sit at the children's table. I would cut turkey into small pieces, wipe spilled juice, and listen to stories about kindergarten adventures. But that would be the last time I allowed myself to be diminished. The inheritance Thomas and I had worked our entire lives to build, the security we'd always planned for Jennifer, would now serve a different purpose, one that honored the values she seemed to have forgotten. I slipped my phone into my robe pocket and stood up, straightening my shoulders. Tomorrow would be a day for giving thanks indeed, just not in the way anyone expected, preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and cold. I woke early, a lifetime habit from years of being the first one, up to start the turkey. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The guest room in Jennifer's house, not my own bedroom with the bay window and Thomas's reading chair still in the corner. I dressed carefully in the outfit I'd planned. A deep burgundy sweater set and charcoal slacks, the pearl necklace Thomas had given me on our 30th anniversary. Small acts of dignity matter when you feel yourself being diminished. The house was already humming with activity when I came downstairs. The catering staff moved efficiently through the kitchen, arranging platters and checking warming trays. The dining room table gleamed with crystal and silver. Everything was perfect, polished, and utterly impersonal. None of my serving dishes, none of my recipes, none of me. "Morning, Mom," Jennifer said, laptop open at the breakfast bar, barely glancing up. "Coffee's in the carafe. Help yourself." "Thank you," I replied, pouring a cup. "What time is everyone arriving?" 2:00. The Prestons are playing golf this morning. Robert's boss Craig and his wife Melissa will be here around 2:30. She tapped furiously at her keyboard. "Oh, and we need you to keep the kids occupied until dinner." "They're excited and getting underfoot?" I nodded, sipping my coffee. "What about our tradition of watching the parade together?" Jennifer sighed, finally looking up. "Mom, that was when I was 10. I have a household to manage and final work emails to send before guests arrive." "I meant the children and me," I clarified. "Charlie and Charlotte might enjoy it." "Fine, whatever keeps them quiet," she said, returning to her screen. "Just make sure they don't mess up their outfits. The photographer is coming at 3. "Photographer? For the family portraits? The ones for our Christmas cards?" I set my cup down slowly. "Will I be in these portraits?" Jennifer had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Of course, Mom, for a few. But we need some with just the Prestons, too. Victoria is very particular about these things." I wanted to ask why the Prestons, who weren't even blood relatives to my grandchildren, warranted special photographs while I was an afterthought, but I swallowed the question. One battle at a time. I spent the morning with Charlie and Charlotte, watching the parade and helping them make hand turkey drawings. They were sweet children, untouched by the status anxiety. That seemed to drive their parents. Charlie showed me his collection of rocks and explained each one's special powers. Charlotte confided that she wanted to be a librarian like me when she grew up. "Your mommy told you I was a librarian?" I asked, surprised Jennifer had shared that detail of my life. "No, Daddy did. He said you worked with dusty old books," Charlotte replied innocently. I smiled tightly. "Those dusty old books helped pay for your mommy's college education." At 1:00, Jennifer swept in, now dressed in an emerald green dress that probably cost more than a month of my pension. "Kids, time to get dressed. Grammy, can you help them? Their outfits are laid out on their beds." And please make sure Charlotte's hair is brushed properly this time. This time. A reference to the school concert last month when apparently my braiding skills hadn't met Jennifer's Instagram standards. By 2 o'clock, the house was transformed. Thanksgiving music played softly through hidden speakers. The scent of catered turkey and stuffing filled the air. Robert stood by the door in a cashmere sweater and pressed slacks, ready to greet his parents. The Prestons arrived first, Victoria air-kissing everyone, William delivering firm handshakes and immediately complimenting Robert on his recent promotion. They barely acknowledged me, except when Victoria handed me her cashmere coat with a distracted, "Thank you, Elaine." Not even a glance at my face, as if I were staff. I hung up their coats and returned to find Victoria already seated in what had been my chair at Thanksgiving for decades, the hostess position at the head of the table. Jennifer hovered nearby, pouring her expensive Chardonnay and laughing too loudly at something William said about property values. More guests arrived: Robert's colleague Craig and his wife Melissa, Victoria's sister Diane and her husband Stephen. Each time, Robert and Jennifer performed the same welcoming routine. Each time they mentioned his promotion, her marketing accounts, their recent vacation to Bermuda. Each time, I became more invisible, standing on the periphery with a polite smile. The photographer arrived and orchestrated a series of portraits in front of the fireplace. "Family group first," he announced. Jennifer, Robert, Charlie, and Charlotte assembled themselves. I moved to join them. "We'll do extended family next, Mom," Jennifer said quickly. "This is just the immediate family first." Immediate family. The word stung like a slap. I retreated to the kitchen, where the catering staff gave me sympathetic glances as I stood there, pearls and all, clutching a glass of water and blinking back tears. Eventually, I was called in for extended family photos, positioned on the far edge, while Victoria and William Preston took center spots beside their son. In one configuration, I was actually asked to step out so they could get just the Preston family. I was a Richardson. My grandchildren were Richardsons by blood, if not by name. But somehow, we had become less important than the family with the country club membership and connections to Robert's firm. At 4 o'clock, dinner was served. Jennifer directed everyone to their seats with the practiced air of a maitre d'. The adults settled around the dining table with its linen tablecloth and floral centerpiece. I stood uncertain until Jennifer gestured to the folding table in the corner. "Mom, the kids are waiting for you," she said brightly, as if she were doing me a favor. The children's table. A card table covered with a plastic tablecloth featuring cartoon turkeys, paper plates, plastic cups with bendable straws, and child-sized silverware. Charlie and Charlotte sat there, along with Diane's 7-year-old son and Victoria's niece's 4-year-old daughter. I took my assigned seat, knees practically to my chest in the small chair, as Robert carved the turkey at the main table with theatrical flourishes. William Preston made a toast about success and family legacy that everyone applauded. Jennifer beamed at her in-laws, not once looking in my direction. The catering staff served the main table first, elegant portions of turkey, cranberry compote, and gourmet stuffing that bore no resemblance to my family recipe. Then they brought the children's plates, turkey already cut into bite-sized pieces, mashed potatoes with no gravy, might stain, and simple steamed vegetables. "And for the children's guardian," one server said quietly, placing an identical child's portion in front of me, guardian, not grandmother, not family matriarch, not even honored guest, just the designated childminder. I looked down at the plastic fork in my hand, at the paper napkin with dancing turkeys, at the small portion of food deemed appropriate for someone not worthy of the adult table. Across the room, Victoria Preston was describing their upcoming winter in Palm Beach. Jennifer and Robert were hanging on every word. William was explaining something to Craig with authoritative gestures. Crystal glasses clinked. Adult laughter rippled. "Grammy, can you cut my turkey smaller?" Charlotte asked. I turned to her sweet face and felt a wave of clarity wash over me. This beautiful child deserved better than to see her grandmother treated as an afterthought. What lessons was she learning about how to treat family, about respect for elders, about what matters in life? Of course, sweetheart, I said, helping her even as I made my decision final in my mind. The inheritance would change today. Not out of spite, but out of love. Love for what could be saved, for what needed to be protected. My grandchildren would still be provided for, but through a structure that would ensure the values I held dear weren't lost in the hunger for status and appearance. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Mr. Peterson confirming our appointment for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I slipped it back, a small smile forming on my lips. Grammy, are you okay? Charlie asked, noticing my expression. I'm better than okay, I told him honestly. Sometimes in life, you have to sit at the little table to see the big picture. He nodded seriously, though I knew he didn't understand. Someday he would. After dinner, dessert was served. Not my homemade pies, which remained untouched on the kitchen counter, but elegant little pastries from the bakery, each topped with a chocolate turkey decoration. I excused myself and slipped outside onto the back porch. The November air was crisp, stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I thought about Thomas, about what he would say if he could see what had become of the family we built, the daughter we raised. It's time to reset things, isn't it? I whispered to the night sky. The sliding door opened behind me. It was Robert, 2 tumblers of bourbon in hand. He offered one to me with an ingratiating smile. Thought you might need this, he said. Holiday family gatherings, am I right? I accepted the glass. Thank you, Robert. He leaned against the railing, loosening his collar. Listen, about the seating arrangements. Jennifer thought you wouldn't mind. Kids can be a handful, and you're so good with them. I don't mind being with my grandchildren, I said carefully. I mind being treated as if I'm not an important part of this family. Robert had the decency to look uncomfortable. You know how Jennifer gets about impressing the Prestons. They can be judgmental. And what they think matters more than how your children's grandmother feels. He sipped his bourbon, avoiding my eyes. It's complicated, Elaine. William's firm just made me partner. The Prestons have connections we need. Jennifer's trying to land the Preston Foundation as a client for her agency. So I was sacrificed on the altar of business connections, I said, not bothering to hide the hurt in my voice. Don't be so dramatic, Robert said, echoing Jennifer's dismissal from the day before. It's just one dinner. I drained my glass and handed it back to him. You know, Robert, my husband built his accounting firm from nothing. He never once asked me to sit at a children's table to impress a client. He never made me feel small to make someone else feel big. Robert's face hardened. Different times, Elaine. Different world. Yes, I agreed. A world where family loyalty seems to matter less than social climbing. I walked past him, back into the house where Victoria Preston was now holding court in the living room, describing her recent Mediterranean cruise. Jennifer sat beside her, nodding eagerly, while the catering staff silently cleared dishes from both tables. My untouched pies still sat on the kitchen counter. I picked them up, all 3, and walked to where Charlie and Charlotte were playing with their cousins. Who wants Grammy's special pie? I asked, loud enough for the adults to hear. The children cheered. Jennifer's head snapped up, a look of alarm crossing her face. Mom, we have the desserts from Magnolia. These are homemade, I interrupted pleasantly. With real pumpkin, hand-picked apples, and the secret ingredient in the pecan pie that Thomas loved so much. Victoria's perfectly arched eyebrow rose slightly. You actually bake? How traditional. The condescension in her voice could have cut glass. I smiled directly at her as I sliced generous portions for each child. I believe in passing down family traditions, Victoria. Some things shouldn't be outsourced, don't you think? Jennifer shot me a warning look, but I ignored it. For the next 15 minutes, I sat with the children, enjoying their delight in my pies, telling them stories about Thanksgivings past when their mother was small. I caught Jennifer watching us, a flicker of something, recognition, regret, crossing her face before she turned back to Victoria's monologue. Later, as guests prepared to leave, I hugged my grandchildren tightly and kissed the tops of their heads. Grammy loves you very much, I told them. Never forget that. Are you leaving too? Charlotte asked. Not yet, sweetheart. Grammy needs to have a talk with your mommy and daddy first. The moment of truth was coming. The breaking point had been reached, and now there was no turning back. After the last guest departed and the catering staff finished packing up their equipment, an unnatural quiet settled over Jennifer's house. Robert retreated to his study with another bourbon, mumbling something about checking emails. The children were upstairs in their rooms, Charlotte reading and Charlie playing with his dinosaur figures. I found Jennifer in the kitchen, inspecting the caterer's final invoice. She changed from her emerald dress into yoga pants and a cashmere hoodie, her makeup still perfect, her posture rigid. I think that went well, she said without looking up. Craig seemed impressed with the spread. That could be good for Roberts. Year-end bonus. I sat on one of the bar stools across from her. We need to talk, Jennifer, she sighed, still focused on the invoice. If this is about the seating, Mom, I really don't have the energy right now. It was just a practical decision. Was it? I kept my voice steady. Or was it about making sure I didn't embarrass you in front of the Prestons? Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? You tell me. You've been positioning me out of the way all weekend. The children's craft table yesterday, babysitting duty today, seated with the kids instead of the adults. I'm starting to get the picture. Jennifer set down her pen, exasperation clear on her face. Mom, please, not everything is about you. We had limited space at the main table, and someone needed to watch the children. There were 12 seats at that dining table. I counted them. You seated 10 adults. She flushed slightly. The flow of conversation is important. The Prestons don't want to hear about your book club or your volunteer work at the library. The words hung in the air between us, raw and revealing. Not, I don't want to hear about your life, but they don't. As if their opinions mattered more than her own mother's presence. I see, I said quietly. And what would they want to hear about? Your promotion? Robert's golf game? The vacation home you're thinking of buying in Aspen? Don't be bitter, Mom. It doesn't suit you. Jennifer began arranging papers into a neat stack. Success requires certain social accommodations. Is that what I am now? A social accommodation to be managed? She sighed dramatically. You're twisting my words. Look, I know things were different in your day. Dad built his firm. You had your library job. You raised me in a nice middle-class neighborhood. That was enough then. But Robert and I are building something bigger. The Prestons have connections we need. So connections matter more than family. Now, it wasn't a question. Family is important, Jennifer insisted, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. That's why we're working so hard. For Charlie and Charlotte's future. We want them to have every advantage. What about the advantage of seeing their grandmother treated with respect? What lesson did they learn today when they watched me being seated at a children's table while people who aren't even blood relatives took precedence? Jennifer's face hardened. Mom, you're being dramatic. The kids love having you sit with them. You're making an issue out of nothing. I shook my head slowly. It's not nothing, Jennifer. It's a pattern. The way you dismiss my ideas, the way you speak to me in front of others, the way you've been treating me like I'm an obligation rather than your mother. That's ridiculous, she snapped, but her eyes slid away from mine. Is it? When was the last time you asked about my life? When was the last time you remembered that before I was your mother, I was a person with my own dreams and achievements. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't start with the "I sacrificed everything for you" speech. I know you gave up opportunities to raise me. That was your choice. It was my choice, I agreed. One I never regretted until recently. But what I'm asking now is, when did you decide I was disposable? Disposable? Jennifer's voice rose. We invited you for Thanksgiving. You invited a babysitter who wouldn't disrupt your social climbing. Robert appeared in the doorway, drink in hand. Everything okay in here? I can hear you from my office. Jennifer turned to him. Mom's upset about sitting at the kids' table. She's making it into some big symbolic thing. Robert had the grace to look uncomfortable. Elaine, we've had a long day. Maybe we should all just get some rest and— I've made a decision, I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Jennifer frowned. You're scheduled to stay until Sunday. We have the Christmas Light Festival on Saturday, and you promised to take the kids so Robert and I could attend the Preston's charity gala. Of course. Another babysitting assignment? I've made other plans, I said simply. What plans? Jennifer demanded, crossing her arms. You never have plans. You're retired. The casual cruelty of her words hung in the air. You never have plans. You're retired. As if my life had ended the day I left my career. As if I existed in suspended animation waiting for her to need something from me. I have an appointment with Mr. Peterson tomorrow morning. Robert tensed visibly. Your attorney? Yes. Jennifer set down her water glass with excessive care. Why would you need to see your attorney right after Thanksgiving? What's so urgent? I met her gaze steadily. I'm making changes to my will. The room went silent. Robert's knuckles whitened around his glass. Jennifer's face paled beneath her. Perfect makeup. Changes? She finally asked, voice carefully controlled. What kind of changes? Substantial ones. Robert stepped forward, setting his drink on the counter. His tone shifted to something conciliatory, almost placating. Elaine, if this is about today, I think we can all agree it was just a misunderstanding. There's no need to make hasty decisions based on a seating arrangement. This isn't hasty, Robert. It's long overdue. I stood up, smoothing my slacks. I've been watching this pattern develop for years. Today was simply clarifying. Jennifer's composure cracked. So what? You're going to cut me out because you didn't like where you sat at Thanksgiving dinner? That's insane. No, Jennifer. I'm going to restructure my estate because I've realized that the values your father and I tried to instill, respect, compassion, family loyalty, aren't being honored, and I won't reward that. Robert stepped closer to Jennifer, his face darkening. This is emotional manipulation, Elaine. You're using your money to punish Jennifer because you felt slighted. I shook my head. It's not punishment. It's accountability. Thomas and I didn't work our entire lives to fund a lifestyle that pushes family aside for social status. Jennifer's face flushed with anger. This is so typical. You always hold things. Over my head, how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. Newsflash, Mom, that's what parents are supposed to do. You don't get special credit for doing your job. You're right, I said quietly. Parents are supposed to provide for their children. And they're also supposed to teach them values. It seems I failed at the second part. So you're going to what? Donate everything to charity? Give it all to some random cousin? I haven't decided yet. That's why I'm meeting with Mr. Peterson. Robert set his glass down with a sharp click. Elaine, think about what you're doing. That money represents Charlie and Charlotte's education, their future security. I looked him directly in the eye. My grandchildren will be provided for, Robert. But not in a way that allows them to be weaponized against me. Weaponized? Jennifer's voice rose. For God's sake, Mom, it was a seating arrangement. Was it? Or was it the clearest indication yet of where I stand in your priorities? I took a deep breath. When your father died, he left everything to Me with the understanding that eventually it would go to you and the children, but he trusted me to use my judgment. And your judgment is to punish me over a perceived slight? Jennifer was shouting now, all pretense of control gone. My judgment is to protect what Thomas and I built from being used to fund a lifestyle that devalues family bonds. The kind of lifestyle that teaches Charlie and Charlotte that their grandmother belongs at a folding table with paper plates. Robert stepped between us, his voice taking on a patronizing calm. Everyone's tired. This has been an emotional day. Elaine, why don't you sleep on this? I'm sure things will look different in the morning. I smiled thinly. I've been sleeping on this for years, Robert. Every time Jennifer dismissed my input, every time she treated me like an embarrassing obligation, every time she called me only when she needed money or childcare. I'm wide awake now. I turned to leave the kitchen, but Jennifer grabbed my arm. Mom, stop. This is crazy. You can't just rewrite your will because you're having some kind of senior moment. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I'm 68, Jennifer, not incompetent. My senior moment is finally seeing clearly what's been happening all along. Nothing has been happening, she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. You're creating drama out of nothing. If it's nothing, then why are you so upset about the will? Her mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. Robert stepped forward again, his tone reasonable but eyes calculating. Elaine, think about your relationship with Jennifer. Do you really want to damage it permanently over this? That's an interesting question, Robert, because from where I stand, the relationship has already been damaged, not by me changing my will, but by how I've been treated. I'm simply responding to what already exists. I walked to the doorway, then turned back. I've booked a car service for 7 a.m. tomorrow. I won't disturb anyone when I leave. Where are you going? Jennifer demanded, tears of frustration in her eyes. Back to your empty house to sit alone? The contempt in her voice struck like a physical blow. Your empty house, alone, as if my life without her was nothing, as if solitude was a punishment, rather than peace. Actually, after my meeting with Mr. Peterson, I'm flying to Arizona. Jennifer blinked in surprise. Arizona? Why? You don't know anyone there. I'm visiting Carol Mitchell. Dad's cousin? You haven't seen her in what, 20 years? 23, I corrected. Since your father's funeral. She invited me many times, but I always declined because I wanted to be available for you and the children. The implication hung in the air. I had prioritized Jennifer over my own relationships, my own possibilities, a choice she clearly wouldn't have made for me. So you're choosing her over your own daughter now? Jennifer's voice was incredulous. No, Jennifer, I'm choosing myself, for the first time in decades. I picked up my phone from the counter. I've texted Charlie and Charlotte goodnight. Please tell them I love them, and I'll call them tomorrow. I walked out of the kitchen, my steps lighter than they had been in years. Behind me, I heard Robert's urgent whisper to Jennifer. Call her bluff. She won't go through with it. Your mother doesn't have the spine to actually cut you off. I smiled to myself as I climbed the stairs to the guest room. They still didn't understand what had happened today. This wasn't about money or inheritance or even the children's table. This was about reclaiming my worth. I packed my suitcase methodically, my hands steady, my mind clear. Tomorrow would bring the first real day of the rest of my life, the day I stopped being an accessory to my daughter's social aspirations and started being Elaine Richardson again. As I folded my burgundy sweater, I noticed a text message from an unexpected number. Carol, responding to my impulsive message from earlier. About time you said yes. The guest room is ready and the hiking trails are magnificent this time of year. Can't wait to see you, Elaine. There's a whole life waiting for you out here. A whole life. Not leftover scraps from my daughter's table, but a life of my own choosing. For the first time in years, I fell asleep with a smile on my face, dreaming not of what I was leaving behind, but of what lay ahead. The car service arrived. promptly at 7 a.m. I'd slept surprisingly well, waking before my alarm with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I dressed in a tailored navy pantsuit, something I'd purchased years ago for library board meetings but rarely wore since retiring. Today felt like an occasion that demanded armor. I moved quietly through the still dark house, my suitcase wheels silent on the thick carpet. In the kitchen, I left a handwritten note for Charlie and Charlotte, telling them I loved them and would call soon. I didn't leave anything for Jennifer or Robert. As I closed the front door behind me, I half expected to hear footsteps hurrying down the stairs. Jennifer coming to apologize, to ask me to stay. The house remained silent. The only sound was the car door closing as the driver stowed my suitcase in the trunk. "Where to, ma'am?" he asked. "The Oakwood Heights Professional Building, please. I have an 8:30 appointment." The drive to Mr. Peterson's office was peaceful, morning sunlight gradually illuminating frost-covered lawns and quiet streets. I checked my phone once, no messages. From Jennifer, though I hadn't really expected any. She would be employing the silent treatment, her favorite tactic since childhood. Withhold affection until I gave in. Apologized for whatever offense she'd decided I'd committed. Not this time. Mr. Peterson was already in his office when I arrived, silver-haired and dignified in a charcoal suit. He'd been Thomas's attorney before becoming mine, handling everything from business contracts to estate planning. "Elaine," he greeted me warmly, rising from behind his desk. "It's good to see you, though I admit I was surprised by your call. Thanksgiving is usually a time for family, not legal consultations." "That's precisely why I'm here, William," I replied, taking a seat across from him. "Family, and what that really means." For the next hour, we discussed the changes I wanted to make to my will. The house on Maple Avenue, the vacation property in Maine, Thomas's investment portfolio that had grown substantially over the years, assets worth nearly $3 million in total. "So you want to create a trust for your grandchildren with disbursements for education and major life expenses, but nothing directly to Jennifer or Robert?" Mr. Peterson clarified, making notes. "That's correct. Charlie and Charlotte should have their education fully funded. Private school if necessary, college, even graduate school if they choose that path. But I want the trust managed by you, not by Jennifer or Robert. And the house? The vacation property?" I took a deep breath. "The main property can be held in trust for the grandchildren's use. As for the house, I'm not ready to decide yet. For now, it remains in my name." William set down his pen, studying me carefully. "Elaine, I have to ask, is everything all right? These are significant changes." I met his gaze steadily. "Let's just say I've had a clarifying experience regarding where I stand with my daughter and son-in-law." He nodded, not pressing further. "I understand. I can have these changes drafted by early next week. In the meantime, I'll prepare a temporary amendment that achieves your immediate goals, which you can sign before you leave for Arizona." "Thank you, William." As he walked me to the door, he paused. "Thomas would be proud of you, you know. He always admired your strength, even when you didn't see it in yourself." My eyes misted unexpectedly. "I think I'm finally finding it." From Mr. Peterson's office, the driver took me directly to the airport. I'd booked a noon flight to Phoenix, where Carol would meet me. As I waited at the gate, my phone began buzzing with incoming calls. Jennifer, finally realizing I was serious. I let the first 3 calls go to voicemail. On the 4th, I answered. "Mom?" Jennifer's voice was high, panicked. "Where are you?" "I went to your room and your things are gone." "I told you I was leaving this morning," I replied calmly. "I had my appointment with Mr. Peterson, and now I'm at the airport." "The airport?" She sounded genuinely shocked. "You were serious about Arizona?" "Yes, Jennifer. I was serious about everything I said last night." There was a pause, then her voice returned, softer, with a trembling note that seemed calculated to tug at my maternal instincts. "Mom, Please, we need to talk about this. Come back to the house. Whatever you think happened yesterday, we can work it out. I don't think something happened, Jennifer. I know it did. I was there, seated at a children's table while strangers took precedence at my family's Thanksgiving. It was just a seating arrangement. Yes, you've said that. But we both know it was more. She switched tactics, her voice hardening. So you're really going to punish me financially because your feelings were hurt? That's incredibly manipulative, Mom. It's not manipulation, Jennifer. It's a consequence. You and Robert have made it clear where I stand in your priorities. I'm simply adjusting my financial priorities to match. This is about Dad's money, isn't it? Her voice turned accusatory. You always acted like it was yours alone to control, even though he meant it for all of us. I took a deep breath. Your father left everything to me, with complete discretion over how it would eventually be distributed. He trusted my judgment. And your judgment is to cut off your only daughter over a stupid seating chart? She was shouting now, heedless of who might overhear her end of the conversation. My judgment is to protect the grandchildren's future while ensuring the family values your father and I believed in are respected. This is insane. You can't just... I can, Jennifer, and I have. I kept my voice level. The papers are being drawn up. The temporary amendment has already been signed. There was a long silence. Then her voice returned, ice cold. Robert was right about you. You're using your money as a weapon because you're bitter about getting old, about being irrelevant. The words stung, but I refused to let her see it. Is that what you tell yourself? That I'm bitter and irrelevant? Not that I'm a person who deserves basic respect from her daughter? What about my respect? She demanded. What about honoring your commitment to Dad to take care of us? I am taking care of what matters, the values we wanted to pass on, the grandchildren's future. What I'm not doing is bankrolling a lifestyle that treats family as disposable. The airport PA system announced boarding for my flight. I have to go, Jennifer. My flight is boarding. Mom, don't you dare hang up. We're not finished. Actually, we are. For now, I'll call the children next week. The children? What about me? You're just going to walk away from your only daughter? The guilt trip was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Jennifer, you walked away from me long ago. You just kept me around for babysitting and financial support. That's not true. Goodbye, Jennifer. I'll be in touch about arrangements for the grandchildren. I ended the call and turned off my phone as I joined the boarding line. My hands were shaking slightly, but my resolve remained firm. 3 hours. Later, as the plane began its descent into Phoenix, I turned my phone back on. It immediately lit up with notifications, 15 missed calls from Jennifer, 7 from Robert, and a flurry of text messages ranging from pleading to threatening. Jennifer. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. Jennifer. You're being completely unreasonable. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. Jennifer. The kids are asking where you went. What am I supposed to tell them? Robert. Elaine, this behavior is disturbing. Jennifer is extremely upset. Call us immediately. Jennifer. If you go through with this, you're ruining our relationship forever. Is that what you want? Robert. We're consulting our own attorney. What you're doing could be considered elder financial instability. Think carefully. The last message made me laugh out loud, startling the passenger beside me. Elder financial instability? They were grasping at straws now, trying to paint me as incompetent, rather than acknowledging the real issue. As the plane taxied to the gate, one final message came through. From Jennifer, but in a completely different tone. Jennifer. Mom, I'm... Sorry, really, I didn't mean to hurt you. Please come home so we can talk. I love you. For a brief moment, my heart softened. Then I remembered the look on her face when she'd directed me to the children's table. The dismissive way she'd treated me all weekend, the cutting comment about my empty house. This wasn't genuine remorse. It was panic at the prospect of losing her inheritance. I didn't reply. Carol was waiting at arrivals, gray-haired and tanned, wearing jeans and a turquoise blouse. I barely recognized her. The last time we'd met was at Thomas's funeral, both of us dressed in black, heavy with grief. She looked younger now, somehow, her face lined but relaxed. "Elaine!" she called, waving enthusiastically. "Over here!" We embraced, and she held me at arm's length, examining me with kind eyes. "It's been far too long. How was your flight?" "Surprisingly peaceful," I replied. "Though my phone less so." She laughed, taking my carry-on. "Let me guess. The family realized you were serious?" "Something like that." As we walked to short-term parking, she glanced at me. "You know, Thomas always said you had a steel core under that accommodating exterior. I think he'd be pleased to see it showing." In Carol's SUV, driving toward Sedona, my phone continued to buzz with incoming messages. I silenced it without looking. "Not going to answer?" Carol asked, navigating onto the highway. "Not yet. I need some distance first." She nodded approvingly. "Good for you. Boundaries are healthy." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the landscape changing from urban sprawl to dramatic desert vistas. Finally, I asked, "How did you do it? After Richard died, how did you build a new life?" Carol had been widowed 5 years before Thomas passed away. While I had retreated into my role as grandmother and family matriarch, she had sold their Chicago home, moved to Arizona, and started over. "One day at a time," she said simply. And by remembering that Richard would have hated to see me disappear into grief or family obligation, he married me for my spirit, not my willingness to become invisible. "Thomas would have felt the same," I said quietly. "Of course he would. That's why you're here." She shot me a sidelong glance. "So, what triggered this awakening? Your message wasn't exactly forthcoming." I laughed softly. "Would you believe it was a children's table at Thanksgiving dinner?" Actually, I would. Sometimes it's the small indignities that finally break through. I told her everything. The seating arrangement, the family photos, the catered meal that erased my traditions, the way Jennifer and Robert had reacted to my decision to change my will. Carol listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. When I finished, she said, "You know, they're going to keep coming at you. This isn't over." "I know, but neither am I." My phone buzzed again, a text from an unfamiliar number. I opened it cautiously. "Mrs. Richardson, this is Gordon Lewis, attorney for Jennifer and Robert Hansen. Please contact me at your earliest convenience regarding your estate planning. We have concerns about undue influence and would like to avoid unnecessary legal proceedings." I showed the message to Carol, who let out a low whistle. "Wow, they moved fast." "They're afraid," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Not of losing me, but of losing the money." "What will you do?" I considered the question as the red rocks of Sedona came into view, majestic and enduring against the blue sky. "Forward it to Mr. Peterson, and then enjoy my vacation." "Just like that?" I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Just like that. They thought I was a pushover, the convenient grandmother, the source of childcare and inheritance. They never expected me to push back. Carol laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Oh, Elaine, I have a feeling this is going to be quite an adventure." As we drove into Sedona, my phone buzzed one more time. A voicemail from Jennifer. I hesitated, then played it on speaker. "Mom." Her voice was tight, controlled. "I just got a call from your attorney. This is completely unacceptable. You can't just change your will because you're having some kind of midlife crisis or whatever this is. Dad would be so disappointed in you right now. Call me back immediately." Carol raised an eyebrow. "Midlife crisis at 68? That's optimistic." We both burst out laughing, the tension breaking. In that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. The pushback would continue. Jennifer and Robert wouldn't give up easily, but neither would I. For the first time in decades, I was fighting. For myself. And it felt absolutely right. Carol's home in Sedona was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected something modest, perhaps a small retirement condo with desert landscaping. Instead, she lived in a stunning contemporary house perched on the edge of a red rock formation, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing views that belonged in a travel magazine. "This is breathtaking," I said, as she led me through the open concept, living area. "Richard's life insurance," she explained with a small smile. "He always said if anything happened to him, I should use it to build a life that made me happy, not one that made others comfortable." Sounds like Richard and Thomas would have gotten along, I mused, running my hand along the sleek kitchen counter. "They did," Carol laughed. "Remember that fishing trip in Michigan? The two of them stayed up all night talking philosophy and never caught a single fish." The memory warmed me. Thomas had been gone 7 years now, but moments like this brought him back so vividly. "The guest suite is down this hall," Carol continued, leading me toward the east wing of the house. "You have your own bathroom, sitting area, and private patio. Stay as long as you like, Elaine. I mean it." The suite was beautiful, decorated in southwestern colors but with a modern aesthetic. A small desk faced a window overlooking a garden, filled with native plants. On the desk sat a vase of fresh wildflowers and a handwritten note, "Welcome to your new beginning." That first evening, we sat on Carol's terrace with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the red rocks in deepening shades of crimson and gold. The silence between us was comfortable, the kind only possible between people who don't feel the need to fill every moment with words. "You know," Carol said finally, "I was in a similar position once." I turned to her curious. "With your children?" "No, with Richard's family." She swirled her wine thoughtfully. "After he died, his brother Marcus expected me to hand over Richard's half of their family business. They'd co-owned it for years, but Richard's share was legally mine. Marcus just assumed I'd sign it over, kept talking about keeping it in the family as if I wasn't family after 30 years of marriage. What did you do?" "I sold my share to their competitor." She grinned mischievously. "Used the money to build this house. Marcus didn't speak to me for 5 years. And now? Now he visits twice a year, humble as a monk. Turns out respect has to be earned, not assumed." I laughed, genuinely amused by her audacity. "I'm not sure Jennifer will ever forgive me if I go through with changing my will." Carol shrugged. "Maybe not. But is her forgiveness worth your self-respect?" The question lingered in the air between us as night fell over the desert. That night, I slept better than I had in months, maybe years. No anxious checking of my phone for messages from Jennifer about the grandchildren. No mental calculations about when I needed to be available for babysitting. No guilt about not visiting often enough. Just deep, restorative sleep. In the morning, Carol and I hiked to a nearby mesa. Nothing too strenuous, but enough to feel the pleasant burn in my muscles, the expansion of my lungs in the clear desert air. At the top, we sat on sun-warmed rocks and looked out over the valley. "I've been thinking about your situation," Carol said, passing me a water bottle. "Have you considered what you actually want the outcome to be?" I blinked, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you changing your will to punish Jennifer, or is there something deeper you're trying to accomplish?" I considered this, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. I began, then paused, realizing I hadn't fully articulated it even to myself. I want to be valued for who I am, not what I can provide. I want Jennifer to see me as a person with my own life and worth, not just as a convenient grandmother or a walking inheritance. Carol nodded. "And if that never happens, If she never sees you that way, then at least I'll have lived authentically. For whatever time I have left, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. I can't control how Jennifer sees me, but I can control how I see myself. That, Carol said, squeezing my hand, is the difference between a reaction and a response. You're not just reacting to being seated at the children's table. You're responding to years of being marginalized. When we returned to the house, I checked my phone for the first time that day. More messages from Jennifer, each one revealing a different strategy. Jennifer: Mom, I'm worried about you. This impulsive behavior isn't like you. Are you feeling okay? Should we schedule a doctor's appointment when you get back? Jennifer: The kids are asking about you. Charlotte cried this morning because you left without saying goodbye. How could you do that to her? Jennifer: Dad would be so hurt by what you're doing right now. You know he wanted us to stay close as a family. The last one made me set down the phone with shaking hands. You okay? Carol asked, setting a cup of tea in front of me. Jennifer's bringing Thomas into it, I said quietly, claiming he would be disappointed in me. Carol's expression hardened. That's low, even for someone desperate. But what if she's right? What if he would be disappointed? Elaine, Carol said firmly, I knew Thomas for 40 years. He adored you, respected you, and wanted you to be happy. The only thing that would disappoint him is seeing you treated as an afterthought by the daughter you raised. I nodded, wanting to believe her. Then my phone rang. Not Jennifer this time, but a number I recognized immediately. Margaret Turner, my oldest friend from the library. We'd worked together for 20 years before retirement. Margaret? Elaine, thank goodness. Margaret's familiar voice came through, concerned. Jennifer called me this morning. She's worried sick about you. My stomach tightened. What did she say? That you'd had some kind of episode at Thanksgiving, stormed out of her house, and flew to Arizona on a whim. She thinks you might be having cognitive issues. Margaret's voice softened. Elaine, I told her that was ridiculous. You're the most clear-headed person I know. But I promised I'd check on you. The realization of what Jennifer was doing hit me like a physical blow. She was contacting my friends, painting me as mentally unstable, building a case for potential legal intervention. Margaret, I'm perfectly fine, I said, keeping my voice steady. I had a disagreement with Jennifer about how I've been treated in the family. I decided to take some time away to think, and I'm visiting Thomas's cousin Carol in Sedona. That sounds completely reasonable, Margaret said, relief evident in her voice. And knowing Jennifer, I suspect there's more to the story than she shared. I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. She seated me at the children's table for Thanksgiving dinner while her in-laws took places of honor. When I objected, she dismissed my feelings entirely. It was the last in a long pattern of being treated as dispensable. Margaret was silent. For a moment, then said firmly, That's outrageous, Elaine. No wonder you needed space. There's more, I admitted. I'm changing my will, putting the grandchildren's inheritance in a trust instead of leaving everything directly to Jennifer and Robert. And now she's panicking, Margaret concluded. Hence the calls to your friends, suggesting you're not in your right mind. Exactly. Margaret's laugh surprised me. Well, she called the wrong friend for that. Would you like me to call some of the others from the library group? Preempt any more of these concerned check-ins? The offer touched me deeply. Would you? I hate the thought of everyone worrying, or worse, believing I've lost my faculties. Consider it done. And Elaine? For what it's worth, I think you're doing exactly the right thing. It's about time someone stood up to that daughter of yours. After we hung up, I sat at Carol's kitchen island, staring at the sunlight streaming across the terracotta tiles. Jennifer's contacting my friends, I told Carol, suggesting I'm having cognitive issues. Carol's eyebrows shot up. That's playing dirty. It's also predictable, I sighed. She can't fathom that I'd make this decision in my right mind, so clearly I must be impaired. What will you do? I considered the question carefully. I think I need to be strategic. Document everything. Make it clear I'm mentally sound. Good thinking, Carol nodded. And you might want to expand your support system beyond just me. Who else knows the real Jennifer, not just the polished image she presents? The question made me realize how isolated I'd become. Over the years, I'd let many friendships fade as I centered my life around Jennifer and the grandchildren. I declined invitations, missed book club meetings, all to be available whenever Jennifer called. There's the library group, I said slowly. Margaret, Diane, Susan. We worked together for years, and Thomas's old partners at the accounting firm. They've seen Jennifer in action at company events. Perfect, Carol said. People who've known you for decades and can vouch for your mental acuity if needed. I nodded, a plan forming. I should reach out to them directly before Jennifer can spread her narrative further. Absolutely. And Elaine? Consider making appointments while you're here. Physical, cognitive assessment, whatever might help document your competence. Just in case. I looked at her sharply. You think it will go that far? I think Jennifer and Robert have a lot to lose. $3 million in assets is motivation for some pretty underhanded tactics. That afternoon, I made several calls to my doctor in New Hampshire, arranging for a full physical and cognitive assessment upon my return, to Mr. Peterson, updating him on Jennifer's latest approach, and to 3 of my closest friends from the library, explaining the situation candidly. The support was immediate and overwhelming. Susan. I always thought Jennifer was a bit entitled, to be honest. Remember how she spoke to you at the retirement party? Diane, take all the time you need in Arizona. We've got your back here. James, Thomas's former partner. If they try to claim you're incompetent, they'll have to get through the entire accounting firm first. We know exactly how sharp you are, Elaine. Each conversation strengthened my resolve, reminding me that I hadn't disappeared entirely into my role as Jennifer's mother and the grandchildren's grandmother. I still existed as Elaine Richardson, friend, colleague, person in my own right. That evening, Carol invited several of her local friends over for dinner. A retired judge named Helena, an artist named Miguel, and a former psychology professor named Barbara. They welcomed me warmly, asking about my life without a single question about children or grandchildren. We discussed books, politics, travel plans. For hours, I wasn't anyone's mother or grandmother, just a woman with thoughts and interests of my own. As the night wound down, Helena pulled me aside. Carol mentioned you're having some family difficulties, she said quietly. If you need legal advice beyond what your attorney is providing, I'd be happy to recommend some specialists in family estate matters. The offer was kind, but it was her next words that truly moved me. Whatever you decide, remember that you have the right to set terms for how you're treated. That doesn't end when you become a parent or grandparent. By the time I went to bed, that night, I'd received supportive messages from 6 more friends back home, all responding to my direct outreach before Jennifer could contact them. My phone also showed 5 missed calls from Jennifer and 3 from Robert, but for once, I felt no guilt about not responding immediately. Carol had shown me what was possible, a life defined by choice rather than obligation, surrounded by people who valued me for myself, not for what I could provide. Whether Jennifer ever came around or not, I knew I couldn't go back to being the convenient grandmother, seated at the children's table of her life. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Thomas. Far from being disappointed in me, I imagined him smiling, pleased to see me finally standing up for the dignity he had always believed I deserved. My support system was growing stronger by the day, not just emotional support, but practical reinforcements for the battle I knew was coming. For the first time since this all began, I felt truly ready to face whatever Jennifer and Robert might throw at me next. A week into my stay in Sedona, the desert had worked its magic on me. My posture had straightened, my sleep had deepened, and the constant knot of anxiety in my chest had finally begun to unravel. Carol and I fell into an easy rhythm. Morning hikes, afternoon explorations of local galleries and shops, evenings on the terrace with good wine and better conversation. I was sitting at the small desk in the guest suite, writing in a journal Carol had given me, when my phone lit up with a FaceTime call from Charlotte. My heart leapt. I'd spoken to both grandchildren twice since arriving in Arizona. Brief supervised calls with Jennifer hovering just out of frame, controlling the eye conversation, but this was the first time either child had called me directly. I answered immediately. "Charlotte, what a wonderful surprise!" My granddaughter's face filled the screen, her gap-toothed smile bringing tears to my eyes. "Grammy, guess what? I lost another tooth. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Did the tooth fairy come?" "Uh-huh. She left me $5 whole." Charlotte tilted the phone, giving me a dizzying view of her bedroom ceiling, then her collection of stuffed animals. "I miss you, Grammy. When are you coming home?" "I'm having a little vacation right now, but I'll see you soon." "I miss you too." "Why? Did you leave without saying goodbye?" Her voice turned small, uncertain. "Mommy said you were upset about something." I chose my words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups need time to think about things, just like you do when you go to your room, to be alone for a while. But I will always love you and Charlie no matter what." "Mommy and Daddy are fighting a lot," Charlotte confided, lowering her voice to a whisper. "About you and something called a will." "What's a will, Grammy?" Before I could formulate an age-appropriate response, I heard Jennifer's voice in the background. "Charlotte, who are you talking to?" The phone jostled as Charlotte quickly replied, "Nobody," but it was too late. Jennifer's face suddenly appeared, her expression morphing from suspicion to controlled anger when she saw me. "Mom, I should have known." "Hello, Jennifer," I said calmly. "Charlotte, give me the phone and go downstairs. Daddy has lunch ready." Jennifer's tone left no room for argument. "Bye, Grammy. I love you," Charlotte called as she handed over the device. "I love you too, sweetheart," I managed before Jennifer switched to the rear camera, giving me a view of Charlotte's empty bedroom, rather than her own face. "So this is your new tactic?" Jennifer's voice was icily controlled. "Sneaking calls with my children behind my back?" "I didn't initiate the call, Jennifer. Charlotte FaceTimed me. Because she misses you and doesn't understand why her grandmother abandoned her right after Thanksgiving. The accusation was deliberate, designed to wound." "I didn't abandon anyone," I replied evenly. "I'm taking some time for myself after years of being at everyone else's beck and call." Jennifer switched back to the front camera, her face tight with anger. "Stop pretending this is about finding yourself or whatever midlife crisis narrative you've concocted. This is about punishing me, and you're using my children as pawns. That's not true, and you know it. I've called the children twice. I've sent them postcards. I've made it clear I'm not disappearing from their lives. No, you're just threatening to disappear from their inheritance." Her voice dripped with bitter sarcasm. "Mr. Peterson won't share details, but we know what you're doing. Cutting us out, establishing trusts we can't control. All because you felt snubbed at Thanksgiving dinner." I took a deep breath. "Jennifer, I'm not having this conversation over FaceTime. If you want to discuss my estate planning, you can call me directly, not interrogate Charlotte about who she's talking to. Don't you dare lecture me about my own daughter." Jennifer's composure cracked. "You think a week in Sedona with Cousin Carol gives you some moral high ground? You think your little boundary setting changes the fact that you raised me, which means you're partly responsible for who I've become?" The accusation struck home, as she knew it would. "You're right," I said quietly. "I did raise you. And somewhere, along the way, I failed to teach you that family means more than what they can give you. That's on me, and I'm sorry for it." Jennifer's eyes widened in shock. She'd expected defensiveness, not acceptance. Before she could respond, I continued. But I'm not sorry for taking this time away. I'm not sorry for reconsidering how my assets will be distributed. And I'm certainly not sorry for expecting to be treated with basic respect by my own daughter. Jennifer's face flushed. This conversation is pointless. Clearly you've made up your mind to punish me financially because you felt slighted socially. Fine. But don't expect things to go back to normal when you finally come to your senses and return home. You've done real damage here, Mom. To what, Jennifer? To your inheritance prospects? Or to our relationship? She didn't answer, merely ended the call with a jabbing finger. I sat motionless, the abrupt silence ringing in my ears. Carol appeared. In the doorway moments later, concern etched on her face. Everything okay? I heard raised voices. Jennifer caught Charlotte FaceTiming me, I explained, my hand still shaking slightly. She wasn't pleased. Carol settled into the armchair across from me. I imagine not. What did she say? That I'm using her children as pawns. That I'm having a midlife crisis. That I'm punishing her for a social slight. I shook my head wearily. She still doesn't get it. Or she does and can't admit it, Carol suggested. Acknowledging that she's treated you poorly would require her to change her behavior? Either way, it's clear this isn't going to be resolved anytime soon. I glanced at my phone, which was already showing incoming text messages from Jennifer. She's doubling down. Carol studied me thoughtfully. What's your next move? You've been here a week. Are you planning to return to New Hampshire soon? The question gave me pause. I hadn't really thought beyond this immediate escape. Going home meant facing not just Jennifer and Robert, but returning to a house filled with memories and routines built around family obligations that no longer seemed to matter to anyone but me. I don't know, I admitted. The thought of going back to that empty house, fielding guilt-inducing calls from Jennifer, trying to see the grandchildren on their terms. It's exhausting just imagining it. So don't go back yet, Carol said simply. Stay here through the holidays, skip the drama this year. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. I had never been away from family during Christmas, not once in 68 years. I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition, it's an invitation, Carol interrupted firmly. My friends are having a Christmas Eve gathering at Ghost Ranch. Helena throws a New Year's party that puts Times Square to shame. You could experience the holidays without a single guilt trip or children's table in sight. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. Not Jennifer this time, but Robert. I showed Carol the screen. The second wave of attack, she murmured. Want me to give you some privacy? No, stay, I said, surprising myself with the request. I could use the moral support. I answered the call and put it on speaker. Hello, Robert. Elaine. His voice was steady, businesslike. We need to talk about what's happening here. I'm listening. Jennifer is upset, the children are confused, and frankly, this behavior is concerning all of us. I understand you felt slighted at Thanksgiving, but this extreme reaction, flying across the country, changing your will, refusing to come home, it seems disproportionate. Does it? I kept my voice calm. Or is it the first appropriate response I've had after years of being taken for granted? Robert sighed heavily. Elaine, families have disagreements. That's normal. What's not normal is using financial leverage to punish your daughter over what was essentially a seating chart issue. That's an interesting perspective, Robert. Tell me. If it was just a seating chart issue, why are you and Jennifer so concerned about my will? There was a pause. Because your decisions affect all of us. The grandchildren's education, their future. The grandchildren will be well provided for, I interrupted. As my attorney has surely explained to yours. What's really concerning you is that you and Jennifer won't have direct control over those funds. Another pause, longer this time. When Robert spoke again, his tone had hardened. I'll be blunt, Elaine. We've consulted with specialists in elder law. Your sudden change in behavior, impulsive decision-making, and emotional volatility could be grounds for questioning your capacity to manage your own affairs. Carol made a small, outraged sound beside me. I placed a hand on her arm, silently, asking her to let me handle this. That's quite a leap, Robert, I replied, my voice like ice. From Mom didn't like sitting at the children's table to Mom is mentally incompetent. Did you practice this speech? Or is threatening your mother-in-law something that comes naturally to you? This isn't a threat, he insisted, though his tone suggested otherwise. It's concern. No, it's manipulation, and poorly executed at that. I was surprised by my own boldness. For your information, I've already scheduled comprehensive physical and cognitive assessments with 3 separate specialists. I've documented Jennifer's attempts to suggest to my friends that I'm experiencing cognitive decline, and I've made arrangements with my attorney to bring in independent evaluators if any legal challenge is mounted against my competence. Robert was silent. I continued, my confidence growing with each word. Furthermore, I've updated my medical power of attorney. Carol Mitchell is now my designated healthcare proxy, not Jennifer. So even if I were to become incapacitated, you and Jennifer would not gain control over my medical decisions or my estate. You've replaced Jennifer as your healthcare proxy? Robert sounded genuinely shocked. Do you have any idea how hurtful that will be to her? About as hurtful as being seated at the children's table while the in-laws take places of honor? Or perhaps as hurtful as being treated like the household help rather than a cherished family member? Or maybe as hurtful as being told I have an empty life because I don't center my existence around your family's convenience? Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Elaine, this has gotten out of hand. We should all sit down together when you return. If I return, I corrected. I haven't decided yet. I'm considering spending Christmas in Sedona. This news was clearly unexpected. But the children are expecting you. Jennifer always handles Christmas Eve and you host Christmas Day dinner. That's our tradition. Traditions change, Robert, especially when they're no longer serving everyone involved. So you're punishing the children now too? They've done nothing wrong. It was a low blow, calculated to hit my greatest vulnerability, my love for Charlie and Charlotte. But I was prepared for it. The children will receive gifts from me. Phone, calls, and all my love. What they won't see is their grandmother being treated as an afterthought in her own family. That's a far more damaging example than my absence for one holiday season. Robert's frustration was palpable. This isn't you talking, Elaine. This is, I don't know, Carol's influence or some misguided attempt at finding yourself at an age when you should be focused on family. Actually, Robert, this is exactly me talking, perhaps for the first time in years. I glanced at Carol, who gave me an encouraging nod. And I think we've said all that needs to be said for now. If you or Jennifer would like to have a respectful conversation about moving forward, I'm open to that. But the emotional manipulation stops here. This isn't over, Elaine, Robert said quietly. You're making a choice here that can't be undone. I agree, but it's not the choice you think. It's not about money or wills or inheritance. It's about dignity, and that's something I should have prioritized long ago. I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. Carol looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. That was impressive. Are you okay? Actually, I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. That may have been the most honest conversation I've had with either of them in years. And the Christmas decision? Were you serious about staying here? I nodded slowly. Yes, I think I was. The thought of going back to perform my assigned role in their holiday production, managing the meal preparation, watching the children open gifts, cleaning up afterward while Jennifer and Robert socialize with their important friends, it holds no appeal anymore. Carol squeezed my hand. Then it settled. Desert Christmas it is. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from Jennifer. "I can't believe you do this to your own grandchildren. They'll be devastated. Is this really worth destroying our entire family over a stupid seating arrangement? Think about what Dad would say." I showed the message to Carol, who shook her head sadly. "She still doesn't get it, does she?" "No," I agreed, setting the phone aside without responding. "But I finally do." The confrontation I'd been dreading had come and gone. Jennifer and Robert had played their strongest cards: guilt about the grandchildren, threats of legal action, accusations of mental instability, and I had remained standing. More than standing. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, truly myself. The battle wasn't over, of course. In many ways, it was just beginning. But I had survived the initial confrontation, and in doing so, discovered a strength I'd forgotten I possessed. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I woke to the sound of desert birds singing outside my window in Sedona. The day promised to be clear and crisp, perfect for the art class Carol had signed us up for at a local studio. I stretched and reached for my phone, now a habit to check for messages from the grandchildren. There was a voice message from Charlie, recorded late last night while I was sleeping. "Hi, Grammy. I made a volcano for science class and it actually exploded. I wish you could have seen it. When are you coming home? Love you." His innocent question tugged at my heart. When was I going? Home. The truth was, I didn't know anymore. My scheduled 2-week stay with Carol had already been extended once. The thought of returning to my empty house in New Hampshire, with its carefully preserved routines and spaces arranged around family gatherings that now felt performative rather than genuine, held little appeal. I dressed in comfortable clothes, suitable for an art studio, loose-fitting jeans and a turquoise blouse I'd purchased at a local boutique. My New Hampshire wardrobe had been all neutral colors, practical sweaters, and sensible shoes. Here in Sedona, I found myself drawn to vibrant colors and natural fabrics, clothing that expressed something beyond mere functionality. "Ready for your artistic debut?" Carol asked as I joined her for breakfast on the terrace. "I haven't painted since high school art class," I admitted. "I'm not sure how much talent has survived the decades." "It's not about talent," Carol replied, pouring me coffee. "It's about trying new things, seeing what resonates. That's how you rebuild." "Rebuild?" "Your identity," she clarified. "After decades of being primarily Jennifer's mother and the grandchildren's grandmother, you're rediscovering who Elaine Richardson is without those roles dominating." Her words struck a chord. For so long, I'd defined myself by my relationships to others: daughter, wife, mother, grandmother. Even my friendship circle had largely been composed of other mothers from Jennifer's school days, other grandmothers from Charlie and Charlotte's activities. When had I last done something purely for myself, cultivated a passion or interest that had nothing to do with family obligations? The art studio was housed in a converted adobe building near the center of town, flooded with natural light from skylights and large windows. About a dozen students of varying ages were setting up at easels when we arrived. The instructor, Naomi, a silver-haired woman with paint-splattered overalls and vibrant energy, welcomed us warmly. "First-timers?" she asked, showing us to our stations. "First time in decades," I replied. Naomi smiled. "Perfect. You're not bringing any recent bad habits to the canvas. Today we're focusing on intuitive painting, responding to color and shape without worrying about technical perfection or representational accuracy." She demonstrated a few basic techniques, then set us loose with an array of acrylic paints. "Don't think," she advised. "Just feel the colors. What wants to emerge today?" I stared at the blank canvas, paralyzed by the openness of the instruction. What wanted to emerge? I had spent so many years fulfilling others' expectations, anticipating their needs, fitting myself into the spaces they left for me. The freedom to create without parameters felt almost frightening. Beside me, Carol was already applying bold strokes of crimson and gold to her canvas. Across the room, other students were similarly engaged, some working methodically, others with exuberant energy. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and asked myself, what colors feel right today? Not what would match someone's decor or please someone else's eye, but what colors spoke to me. I opened my eyes and reached for a tube of deep indigo blue. Something about its depth called to me. I squeezed a generous amount onto my palette, added some titanium white, and began. For the next 2 hours, I lost myself in the process. I had no plan, no specific image in mind. I simply followed each intuitive choice to the next, adding cerulean blue that reminded me of the lake where Thomas and I had vacationed, swirls of silver that caught the light like moonlight on water, touches of green that spoke of renewal and growth. Beautiful, Naomi said, appearing at my shoulder. You've captured something essential there. I looked at my canvas with fresh eyes. It wasn't technically accomplished. The brushwork was uneven, the composition unconventional. But it held an emotional truth that surprised me. It was a landscape of sorts, but one that existed more in feeling than in literal representation. Deep waters, distant shores, open sky. I didn't know that was inside me, I admitted. Naomi nodded, understanding. That's the gift of intuitive painting. It bypasses the critical mind and speaks directly from deeper places. As we were cleaning our brushes, a woman about my age approached. Your painting is stunning, she said. I'm Diana, by the way. Elaine, I replied, surprised by the compliment. Thank you, though I'm not sure stunning is the right word for a beginner's effort. Don't diminish it, Diana said firmly. Own your creativity. A few of us go for coffee after class on Thursdays. Would you and Carol like to join us? The invitation was casual but sincere. I glanced at Carol, who nodded encouragingly. We'd love to, I said. Over coffee at a nearby cafe, I found myself in lively conversation with 5 women, artists, writers, a retired anthropologist, a former corporate executive, all in their 60s or 70s, all reinventing themselves in various ways. I left a 40-year marriage and moved here on my own, shared Meredith, the former executive. My children thought I'd lost my mind. 6 years later, I've never been happier. My husband died, and suddenly everyone expected me to become the family caretaker, said Lorraine, who wrote mystery novels set in the Southwest. I was supposed to babysit grandchildren, host family gatherings, exist only to serve others' needs. I decided differently. Their stories resonated deeply. Here were women who had faced similar crossroads and chosen paths of self-discovery rather than self-erasure. They spoke without apology about their choices, their adventures, their creative pursuits. They referred to their families with love, but not with the kind of deferent prioritization I had always practiced. They had maintained relationships while also maintaining boundaries. What brought you to Sedona, Elaine? Diana asked as we were finishing our coffee. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. My daughter seated me at the children's table for Thanksgiving dinner. Instead of the awkward silence I half expected, Diana burst out laughing. Oh, I've been there. Not the children's table specifically, but the symbolic equivalent. My son once asked me not to mention my volunteer work with refugees at his dinner party because it might alienate his wife's conservative parents. My daughter-in-law corrects my grammar in front of everyone, added Meredith. As if 3 degrees and a career as a corporate communications director left me incapable of proper English. Their understanding was immediate and genuine. I found myself sharing more about Jennifer and Robert, about the gradual marginalization, about my decision to change my will. Good for you, Lorraine said firmly. It's not about the money, it's about the message. I deserve respect. By the time we parted ways, I had invitations to a book club, a hiking group, and a weekend art retreat in January. My phone held 5 New contacts, women who might become friends, connections that had nothing to do with my identity as mother or grandmother. "Well?" Carol asked as we drove back to her house, my still wet painting carefully secured in the back seat. "What did you think of the Sedona sisterhood?" "They're remarkable," I said thoughtfully. "So unapologetic about their choices. That's what happens when you stop defining yourself primarily through others. You reclaim your right to your own life." That evening, I received an email from Mr. Peterson with the final paperwork for my revised estate plan. The changes were exactly as I had requested. Trust funds established for Charlie and Charlotte's education and future needs, provisions for my house and investments, designated trustees who were not Jennifer or Robert. All that remained was for me to sign the documents in the presence of a notary. As I reviewed the paperwork, I was struck by how different this felt from my previous approach to financial planning. Thomas had always handled our major financial decisions, consulting me but generally taking the lead. After his death, I had maintained the estate plan we created together, viewing myself as a temporary steward of assets that would eventually pass to Jennifer. Now, I was making active choices about resources that were fully mine, shaping how they would be used in ways that aligned with my values. It was another step in reclaiming my identity, not just as someone's mother or grandmother, but as a person with agency and purpose. My phone pinged with a text message from Jennifer. "The kids' Christmas concert is next Tuesday. They're both expecting you to be there. Please don't disappoint them because you're mad at me." The familiar guilt tactic. Just a week ago, it might have worked. But something had shifted in me. I typed my response carefully. "I won't be back in time for the concert. Please record it for me, and I'll FaceTime with Charlie and Charlotte afterward to hear all about it. I love them, and am proud of them always." Simple, clear, no apologies. I pressed send before I could second-guess myself. Jennifer's reply was immediate. "So, you're really staying away for Christmas? Mom, this is ridiculous. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Stop punishing everyone and come home." I showed the message to Carol, who had just brought me a glass of wine. "On the terrace. Still all about her," Carol observed. "Not 'we miss you' or 'I understand why you needed space,' but 'stop punishing everyone.'" "She doesn't get it," I sighed. "She thinks this is a tantrum I'm throwing, not a boundary I'm establishing." "Some people never get it," Carol said gently. "The question is, does her understanding matter to your decisions?" I considered this as the desert sunset painted the red rocks in deepening shades of orange and purple. Did Jennifer's approval or understanding matter to my choices now? For so long, I had calibrated my actions to maintain harmony, to avoid disappointing her, to fulfill the role she expected of me. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't. I'd prefer that she understand, but my decisions aren't dependent on her approval anymore." Carol smiled. That's the sound of a new identity taking shape. Later that night, I called Charlie and Charlotte to hear about their day. They chattered excitedly about school projects, friends, and the upcoming concert. "Grammy, are you coming?" "Home for Christmas?" Charlotte asked directly. "Not this year, sweetheart," I said gently. "Grammy is having a special vacation, but I'll send presents, and we can FaceTime on Christmas morning." "But who will make the special pancakes?" Charlie asked, his face serious. "Dad burns them," I laughed. "I'll send the recipe. Maybe you can help him." "It won't be the same," Charlotte said sadly. "Sometimes different can be good too," I told her. "And I'll be thinking of you both every minute." After the call ended, I sat looking at the painting I'd created that morning, now propped against the wall to dry. The deep blues, the expansive horizon, it represented something I was just beginning to understand, the vast possibilities of a life reclaimed. The next morning, I called the real estate agent who had helped me maintain my New Hampshire property during previous winter absences. "Marion? It's Elaine Richardson. I'm wondering if you could help me with something." I'm thinking of putting my house on the market in the spring. It was just an exploration, not a decision. But speaking the words aloud felt significant. Another step in the emergence of my new identity, one I was creating not in opposition to Jennifer, or in spite of my family roles, but simply for myself. That afternoon, Diana texted to invite me to a solstice celebration the following week. Nothing mystical, she promised. Just good food, live music, and interesting people. A chance to celebrate new beginnings. New beginnings. Yes, that was exactly what I was crafting. One brushstroke, one choice, one boundary at a time. Not just a reaction to being seated at the children's table, but a proactive claiming of the person I wanted to be for whatever years remained to me. 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood in my New Hampshire driveway, watching the moving truck pull away. The house on Maple Avenue, where Thomas and I had raised Jennifer, where I'd lived for over 40 years, was now under new ownership, purchased by a young family with 3 small children who fell in love with the garden I'd tended for decades. Turned to look at the property one last time. The white colonial with black shutters, the maple trees that had given the street its name, the flower beds now bursting with spring blooms, all of it had been home. Now it represented a chapter complete. Ready? Margaret asked, standing beside her car where the last of my personal belongings were packed. Ready, I confirmed, sliding into the passenger seat. I wasn't leaving New Hampshire entirely. After much consideration, I'd purchased a small condo in Portsmouth, closer to the coast and to the friends who had rallied around me during my transformation. The new space was modern, manageable, and entirely mine, decorated not with the accumulated furniture and memorabilia of family life, but with pieces I'd chosen specifically for this new chapter. The proceeds from selling the family home had been substantial. After setting aside funds for my own needs, I had established additional trusts for Charlie and Charlotte, ensuring their future education and a modest nest egg for each when they reached adulthood. The trustee was not Jennifer or Robert, but William Peterson, who would administer the funds according to the guidelines I'd established. Jennifer hadn't spoken to me directly in 3 months. Our last conversation had been when I informed her I was selling the house. "You can't do that," she'd protested, her voice shrill with disbelief. "That's our family home. Where will we have Christmas and Thanksgiving? Where will the kids stay when they visit?" "You have your own home for holidays," I'd replied calmly, "and the grandchildren are always welcome to visit me in Portsmouth or Sedona, where I'll be spending winters." "Sedona," she'd repeated with scathing disdain. "With Cousin Carol and your new artist friends, this middle-aged rebellion has gone. Far enough, Mom. First the will, now the house. What's next? A sports car and a boyfriend?" The derision in her voice had made one thing abundantly clear. She still didn't understand what had happened, what was happening. She saw my choices as reactions to her, as a rebellion or a phase, not as a woman reclaiming her right to direct her own life. I hadn't bothered to correct her. Some understandings couldn't be forced. The grandchildren had adapted better than their mother. We FaceTimed regularly, and they'd come to see my new condo shortly after I moved in, excited about the building's swimming pool and the proximity to the ocean. Charlie had claimed the guest room with its nautical theme as his room, while Charlotte had been captivated by the small balcony where I'd set up container gardens. "You seem different, Grammy," Charlotte had observed during that visit, her perceptive 9-year-old eyes studying me. "Happier." "I am, sweetheart," I'd confirmed. "Sometimes change, even when it's challenging, leads to good things." As Margaret drove us toward Portsmouth, I scrolled through recent photos on my phone. Images from the solstice celebration in Sedona, the art retreat where I'd produced 3 more paintings now hanging in my new home, a group photo from the hiking club I'd joined. In each, I looked vibrant, engaged, present in a way I hadn't been for years. "What time is your flight tomorrow?" Margaret asked, interrupting my reminiscence. 11, I replied, Carol's picking me up in Phoenix at 3. I was returning to Sedona for the summer, not as a temporary escape this time, but as part of my new life rhythm. Winters and summers in the desert, spring and fall in New Hampshire. A bi-coastal existence that would have seemed unimaginable a year ago. "Jennifer still giving you the cold shoulder?" Margaret asked as we turned onto the highway. "Complete silence," I confirmed. "Robert orchestrates all communication about the grandchildren. He's actually been surprisingly civil since I made it clear the trusts for Charlie and Charlotte are irrevocable." "Of course he has," Margaret snorted. "Once he realized he couldn't intimidate you into changing your mind, he shifted to damage control." We rode in comfortable silence for a while before Margaret spoke again. "Do you miss it? The family role, the big house, the holidays?" I considered the question carefully. "I miss what I thought it was," I said finally. "The dream of family closeness, of being valued for who I am rather than what I provide. But the reality? No, I don't miss being taken for granted or treated as an accessory to their lives." Margaret nodded, understanding. "And Thomas? What would he think of all this?" The question made me smile. He'd be proud. He always said I was stronger than I knew, that I too often put others' needs before my own. He'd be glad to see me finally finding my balance. We arrived at my condo building just as the afternoon sun was bathing the brick facade in golden light. The lobby attendant greeted me by name as Margaret helped me bring in the last of my possessions. "Ms. Richardson, these came for you," he said, handing me a package and several envelopes that had arrived in my absence. Upstairs in my condo, with its clean lines and ocean views, I sorted through the mail. Bills, an invitation to a gallery opening featuring local artists, a newsletter from the Sedona Art Center, and a thick cream envelope bearing Jennifer's handwriting. I opened it with curious fingers. Inside was a formal invitation to Charlie's middle school graduation ceremony, taking place in 3 weeks. No personal note, no acknowledgement of our estrangement, just the printed invitation that had presumably gone to all family members. Margaret raised an eyebrow when I showed it to her. "Are you going?" "Of course," I said without hesitation. "This isn't about Jennifer or Robert, it's about Charlie. And if Jennifer makes it uncomfortable," I shrugged, "then she makes it uncomfortable. My relationship with my grandchildren is non-negotiable." After Margaret left, I walked through my new space, touching the artwork I'd created, the furnishings I'd selected, the books I'd arranged not according to anyone else's aesthetic preferences, but my own. Everything here reflected choices I'd made for myself, not to accommodate others' expectations. My phone pinged with a text from Carol. "Cactus flowers are blooming. Your room is ready. Safe travels tomorrow." I smiled, thinking of the desert landscape I'd come to love nearly as much as the New England coastline. In Sedona, I had a different but equally cherished circle. The women from the art class who had become friends. Helena, with her legal wisdom and sharp wit. Miguel, who taught pottery at the community center and had convinced me to try working with clay. A life in 2 places, rich with connections and possibilities I hadn't imagined a year. My phone rang, Charlotte FaceTiming for our regular evening chat. Her face appeared, flushed with excitement. "Grammy! Did you get the invitation to Charlie's graduation? Are you coming?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I assured her. "Mom says you're moving to Arizona for good," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Not for good," I corrected gently. "I'll be there for the summer, then back here in the fall. Both places are home now." She considered this, then nodded. "That's okay then, as long as you're not going away forever." "Never," I promised. "My homes might change, but my love for you and Charlie never will." After our call ended, I stepped out onto my balcony as twilight descended over Portsmouth. Lights were beginning to twinkle along the waterfront, boats returning to harbor after a day at sea. I thought about the journey of the past 6 months, from the children's table at Thanksgiving to this moment of genuine freedom and choice. It hadn't been easy. There had been tears, confrontations, difficult decisions. Jennifer still didn't understand, might never understand. But standing here now, I knew with absolute certainty that walking away from that table had been the most courageous and necessary choice of my life. Not because it had punished Jennifer for her thoughtlessness, but because it had freed me to become again, perhaps for the first time since Thomas died, fully myself. I had reclaimed not just my financial autonomy or my right to make decisions about my own property, but something far more fundamental: my identity as a woman with intrinsic worth, not defined solely by my usefulness to others. The last light of day caught the silver threads in my hair as I leaned against the balcony railing. Tomorrow I would fly to Sedona, to red rocks and creative pursuits and friends who saw me clearly. In 3 weeks, I would return for Charlie's graduation, navigate the complicated family dynamics with grace, but also with firm boundaries. This was my new life. Not a reaction against being seated at the children's table, but a conscious creation of a table of my own, where I was neither relegated to the sidelines nor expected to serve without being served in return. I raised my face to the last warmth of the setting sun and smiled. Thomas had been right. I was stronger than I knew. And it had taken a small indignity, a paper plate at a folding table, to awaken that strength. Sometimes the smallest moments truly do change everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.